Today's video is going to talk about what pieces of loot we think will hold their value for the future phases unless some major rebalancing of gear happens for pre-raid bis near level 60, or something better is released via the future leveling raids that we don't even know about. Currently, not every piece could last to the pre-raid bis grind at 60, but there are a few select pieces we think it wouldn't be a bad idea to go ahead and get now if you can. Anything else we haven't mentioned is because it probably has a better item that you'll start farming either next phase or in future dungeons or a future profession recipe. That doesn't mean the current gear is worthless, as it will help you level faster and clear the new leveling raids better, but more so to say I wouldn't stress too hard about worrying about what your pre-raid bis is at like level 25 or level 40, since if you don't get it this phase you can easily go back and farm it in the next phases. So let's get started with the weapons. The elephant in the room is obviously the epic staff. 26 spell power, 15 int, and some spirit makes an insanely strong leveling staff, and easily something you could take into MC at 60 right when you first hit 60 and not feel self-conscious. Are there better options? Well, better is subjective to be honest with you, but yes, it just all depends on how much effort you want to put forth to get those upgrades. Starting with Warlocks, there is technically Staff of Jordan, which is a worldwide BOE purple that you'll have the best potential to see starting as early as the next phase, but will be extremely expensive to purchase if your drop luck isn't very good. For Shadow Warlocks, you can also use the Staff of Jordan, or you'll have the options of taking Soul Harvester from a class quest line where you can get around level 50. It's a class quest that takes you into Sunken Temple after you do some other things, and then one of the rewards that you get from it is the Soul Harvester Staff. It does trade all damage for pure shadow damage, but gives 16 stamina and 1% spell hit. We think also this would be a little bit better option for tank warlocks looking to get the most out of the shadow side of spells, plus with how little spell hit there is for warlocks at and below level 60, you want to get it to get your Searing Pains and other fire spells to resist less often. Lastly, there is also the Dire Maw loot, and based on how quickly they enabled it at the launch for Classic of 2019, I would expect to see it very soon after or even in the same phase that the other max level dungeons are enabled. And a few of these dungeons too are a couple items like Rod of the Ogre Magi, Witchblade, and Minecarver that, depending on the offhand you pair them with, could be considered minor upgrades or even side grades with better stat allocation depending on what stats you're trying to stack. Lastly, everything I mentioned will be easily replaced by the PvP reputation epics like Ironbark Staff from Arathi Basin Rep, which will be really good for Warlock tanks and okay for DPS, though they'd want to pair the Mindfang Dagger from Arathi Basin Rep with one of the epic Alterac Valley offhand rep pieces. But it all depends on how and more importantly when they will release those. The other smaller elephant in the room is the one-handed dagger off Akumai, Dagger of Willing Sacrifice. Offering some armor, stamina, intellect, and 12 spell power, it already rivals the Witchblade and Minecarver from the higher level dungeons, and again could easily be a weapon you take into MC based on the current stats of the one-handed weapons that drop from the max level dungeons. Regardless, if you want to use a one-hander plus offhand combo instead of a staff, we think it'd be worth going back to BFD once every week or two just for the staff or dagger weapons if you missed them this phase. If they also don't hold back the PvP reputation epics again, the Mindfang Dagger from Arathi Basin Rep combined with an Alterac Valley offhand will easily be the best threat combo for Warlock tanks, or potentially even the best DPS combo regardless if you're Shadow or Fire. Speaking of offhands, both Tome of Cavern Lore and Tome of Shadow Warding will likely remain as one of the best items for their slots on the road to max level, or potentially even entry level rating, unless future leveling drops are added, or you want to grind out some reputation or a really rare BOP drop from Sunken Temple. So yes, there are technically better, especially for Tome of Cavern Lore, but the effort required to get them may make you go, forget about it. Starting off, the BOP blue that you'll get from Sunken Temple is the Drake Stone, which drops off Dream Scythe in the Sunken Temple. It's a blue offhand that normally comes with plus 9 spell power as its base stats, however the other stats are a random roll chance, including plus 20 to 21 shadow power or plus 20 to 21 fire power. If you get those combined, that would be a massive 29 to 30 shadow power or fire power, or what would be a 22 to 23 spell power gain over the Tome of Cavern Lore at the cost of a minor bit of stamina. However, many Warlocks can attest to the sheer amount of runs required to get to the Drakestone to drop, let alone drop with the appropriate roll that you want. Even more compounded by the fact that, again, depending on how they release Alterac Valley, you can just match your Alterac Valley rep and you get a better offhand with more shadow power and stamina if you're a Shadow Warlock, or 10 more fire damage if you're a Fire Warlock. So these facts combined, my sanity is far worth more than that, so I personally won't be farming the Drakestone too hard, just basically whatever runs I do while leveling. But if you are crazy for admittedly a huge power boost, and hate or don't want to wait for the Ultra Egg Valley offhands, hey, go for it, and may the odds forever be in your favor. Tome of Shadow Warding, though, is a far more simpler tell. I'd be willing to bet it will never be replaced as the best in slot defensive mitigation offhand as far as I can tell, unless new items are added specifically to replace it for future profession recipes or in future raids. Despite other offhands at higher levels offering more spell power or stamina and intellect or both, the 40 armor you get from this offhand can literally not be found anywhere else we see except a gray offhand called Stitch's Femur, though the Femur has 50 armor instead of 40 armor, but no other stats. There is a downside though to this because as far as I understand it, Horde will literally never be able to get Stitch's Femur. It is only an alliance item that they can get from killing Stitches in Duskwood. So, that just leaves Tome of Shadow Warding or potentially any future recipe or raid drops. Now, moving on to trinkets. Invoker's Void Pearl will be one of your best trinkets for leveling, but will be replaced at the max level pre-raid Bis grind. So enjoy it until the Uber's grind and DM quest trinket come online. The Dire Maul quest is a pretty simple quest line that shouldn't take too long to complete, and possibly can be even completed solo after getting the Libram Harnessing Shadows as a drop in the Dire Maul dungeon, or purchasing it off the auction house. Then, you just have to accept the quest that the Libram gives you, and turn it into Lorekeeper Mycos inside Dire Maul North to get the trinket. Ubers, though, hosts a rare spawn called Jed Rune Watcher, which every caster will be after because of the Briarwood Reed, whether they're healers, lock tank, or DPS. There's also the Eye of the Beast, which gives plus 2% spell critical you'll get from doing the Onyxia attunement chain, but honestly we think the spell power trinkets that you get from Dire Maul and then also from the Jed Rune Watcher drop are going to outperform those. But as you can see, you have a couple different options to shoot for, some easy to get, some not so easy to get, that will blow the Invoker's Void trinket out of the water. Lastly, this next section is going to be about the extraplanar Spider Silk boots, and in our opinion, they're insanely good for every single Warlock specialization, and they don't really have any direct or side upgrades that we can find that won't come from future recipes or unreleased raids. People will argue that Omnicast boots or Maliki's Shadows Wraps would overtake them, but that 1% spell hit, as mentioned before, is just so precious that we really don't think so. Yes, you trade a little bit of damage on your cast, on average, but in return you have your spells deal 0 damage less often. Combined again with the fact that since there are so few slots with spell hit in the pre-raid Bis, you want to try and grab as much of spell hit as you can. In closing, the 6 or 7 pieces of gear that we mentioned that you can get from the Black Fathom Deeps raid will either take you all the way to entry level raiding or very close to it. Again, for the rest of the drops mentioned, it's not that they're bad or anything, they'll serve you well enough while leveling, but closer to 60 you'll want to think really hard about changing them out for something else. If you liked the video, why not throw us a thumbs up and possibly even a sub? Thanks for tuning in and having a good night.